A warm summer sun rested over Arlington National Cemetery, spreading a soft golden light across the carefully trimmed grass and quiet stone pathways. The air was calm, still, and respectful, as if the entire space was holding its breath. Visitors moved slowly and gently, their voices lowered almost to whispers because everyone who walked through this place could feel the meaning behind it. Here were the names of those who had served, those who had protected, and many who had never returned. At the very center of this sacred space stood the tomb of the unknown soldier. A simple, silent white stone placed with great care. It did not hold a name because the person buried inside never came home with one. They represented all who were lost, all who were missing, all whose stories ended far from home. People came from every state, from every age and background, just to stand for a moment, to look, to remember, and walking before the tomb was the tomb guard. His uniform was crisp and perfectly pressed, the blue and black fabric smooth with no wrinkle in sight. His posture was straight, strong, and unshakable. Every movement he made had purpose. He took 21 measured steps, each one balanced and even. He paused for exactly 21 seconds, then turned with slow, deliberate precision before making his way back again. It was a ceremony of honor, carried out in rain, snow, heat, or cold, day and night. Week by week, year after year, people watched quietly, some with their hands folded, some with their eyes wide, others moved by emotion they could not explain. The guard never looked at the audience. His eyes stayed forward. His mind stayed focused. He walked not for the living who watched, but for the ones who could no longer speak for themselves. On this particular day, a special visitor had arrived. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, had come to see the tomb during a private visit. The moment carried importance simply because the presidency itself is a symbol of national leadership. Secret Service agents surveyed the grounds, ensuring everything was secure. Advisors and military officials followed respectfully behind him. Yet despite the presence of the president and his group, the guard continued his steps exactly the same way. Nothing changed. Not his pace, not his breathing, not even the direction of his eyes. To him, the ceremony was larger than any one person. The tomb was older than every presidency. The duty was something passed down from one guard to another, from generation to generation. The president stood watching, his expression thoughtful. He observed the guard walking under the warm sun, the beads of sweat forming near his brow, the slow but steady rhythm of the polished shoes tapping the stone walkway. It was clear the day was hot. The sunlight reflected sharply off the white stone. Most visitors had shade or the freedom to move, but the guard had none. He remained steady, never adjusting, never slowing. The president spoke quietly to one of his military aides beside him. He was not angry or upset. His tone was casual and honest, the same way someone might speak when they see another person working hard in the heat. "He looks tired," the president said gently. "Should someone take his place? It doesn't look easy to stand out here for so long." The aide listened, unsure whether to respond immediately. The president was simply noticing the difficulty of the job. Many people, when seeing the guard for the first time, thought the same thing. The ceremony looked simple, but the discipline behind it required hours of training, strong self-control, and wholehearted dedication. The president's voice, though quiet, traveled just far enough to be heard by those closest to him. It was not meant to interrupt. It was simply an observation from someone who cared about the comfort of another. However, the tomb guard heard. Even with all his training to stay focused, his ears were trained to be aware. He did not break formation. He did not react. He did not turn his eyes. He continued his steps exactly as before, because this duty was not about comfort and it was not about difficulty. It was about respect. Visitors noticed the moment. Some looked at the president. Others looked at the guard. The space seemed to grow even quieter, as if the air itself waited to see what would happen next. The guard finished his sequence, returned to his starting position, paused for 21 seconds, and then came to a controlled and perfectly executed stop. His posture remained strong and respectful. He then requested permission to speak to the president. This alone surprised some of the people nearby. The guard never spoke during the ceremony unless it was necessary for the dignity of the tomb. Yet this moment, gentle as it was, called for explanation and meaning. The officer in charge gave a small nod. Slowly, The guard turned and walked toward the president. His steps were confident, not rushed. His expression was not emotional, but calm. His eyes held sincerity, discipline, and deep understanding. He saluted. In that simple, respectful gesture, the years of training and honor were clear. It was not about pride. It was not about disagreement. It was about conveying something deeply meaningful in the right way. "Sir," the guard began, his voice steady and soft, "I thank you for your concern." There was no tension, no disrespect, only truth and honor in his tone. "This post is not one of comfort," he continued. "We do not stand here for ourselves. We stand for those who cannot return. We stand for those who gave everything. This duty is a promise, and promises are not broken." The words floated into the quiet air like a prayer. Visitors felt something shift. They were not simply watching a soldier. They were witnessing the living expression of loyalty, tradition, and human respect. Something many people could feel but few could describe. The president listened closely. His expression changed very slowly, not to frustration or irritation, but to understanding. The guard's message was not a correction. It was a reminder of something sacred, something bigger than position, title, or authority. The guard stood with dignity, waiting for acknowledgement, not expecting praise. Everything was still. The warm air, the white stone, the silent names around them, all of it felt connected. Finally, the president nodded once. A small gesture, quiet, but full of meaning. No further words were needed. The guard turned, returned to his post, and resumed his walk. 21 steps, pause, turn, 21 steps, and the rhythm continued, steady as a heartbeat. Visitors remained still for a long moment, moved in a way they had not expected when they arrived. Some placed their hands over their hearts. Some lowered their heads. Some wiped away quiet tears. No one spoke loudly. No one hurried away. Everyone felt something lasting, a lesson in duty, a lesson in honor, a lesson in respect that needed no argument, no defense, and no explanation beyond the simple presence of a soldier who kept his promise. The air remained still after the guard returned to his post, yet everyone could sense that something important had taken place. It was not dramatic or loud. It was quiet, respectful, and meaningful. People watched the guard resume his slow, steady walk, each step placed with care, each pause measured. The rhythm continued exactly as it had before, as if time itself had returned to its rightful pattern. The president stood silently for a few moments, observing the guard with new understanding. His expression had softened. There was no argument in the air, no resistance, only a gentle acceptance of what the soldier had explained. The secret of the tomb of the unknown soldier was not hidden in rules or orders. It was held in the heart and spirit of the guard who walked there. The president's advisors and military staff watched also, quietly respecting the moment. Some of them had known about the guard's tradition for years. Some had attended ceremonies. Yet even they felt something different today. It is one thing to know the history of a place, and another to witness it living and breathing in front of you. The crowd slowly began to relax again. No one rushed to leave. Instead, many chose to continue watching, as if they wanted to understand more about this sacred duty. Children who had been restless earlier now stood still, sensing that this was a time where quiet behavior meant respect. Even the breeze seemed gentle, careful not to disturb the calm. The guard's face remained focused, steady, and controlled. Inside his heart, there was no pride in what he had said. He had not spoken to win praise or recognition. His purpose had only been to protect the dignity of the tomb and the meaning behind his steps. He was not defending himself. He was speaking for those who could no longer speak. While the guard continued his duty, one of the president's military aides stepped closer and softly explained the background of the tomb guard tradition. He spoke not to correct the president, but to help him appreciate the depth of the role. He explained that tomb guards spend long months learning how to walk in perfect rhythm. They practice their movements again and again, until every motion feels natural. They learn the history of every conflict and every fallen soldier. They study the meaning behind service, sacrifice, and remembrance. They prepare not only their bodies, but their minds and hearts. He described how guards stand watch through rain, snow, storms, and summer heat. He shared how even during strong winds or freezing temperatures, the guard does not stop. He does not run for cover. He does not ask for rest, because the person he represents did not have that choice either. Every guard who takes that post knows the responsibility they carry. It is a promise they choose with full awareness, and once chosen, they honor it fully. The president listened carefully to the aide. His eyes remained on the guard, following the repeated pattern of steps. His thoughts were quiet, thoughtful, reflective. Nearby, a woman who had been watching the ceremony felt tears gather in her eyes. She had come because her grandfather had served many years before. She did not know the guard nor anyone buried there, yet she felt a connection that words could not explain. The guard's steps were like a message to every family who had ever waited for someone who did not return. A young boy beside her tugged at her sleeve and whispered, "Why does he walk like that?" She bent down so their eyes were level and answered softly, "Because he is saying thank you with every step." The boy did not speak again. He simply watched, the meaning settling into his young heart. Meanwhile, the president continued observing the ceremony. He understood now that the guard was not simply on duty. He was part of something sacred and enduring, something that did not change with leaders or time, something that belonged to every citizen, past, present, and future. After a little while, the officer in charge of the guard approached quietly to ask if the president wished to meet the guard when the shift changed. The president nodded, but without urgency. He seemed willing to wait. The guard's duty took priority, and the president respected that now. While they waited, the president spoke softly to some of the military staff around him. "I did not realize the depth of this tradition," he said. His tone was thoughtful, not embarrassed. There was no pride to protect because the moment had not been about pride. It had been about learning something meaningful. One of the senior officers nodded. "Many do not realize it when they first watch," he replied. "But once they understand, they never look at it the same way again." Time passed gently, not rushed. The guard continued his steady walk until the shift change ceremony began. Another guard, equally disciplined, arrived to take his place. The ritual was graceful and exact. Each movement was a message of respect. The guards saluted one another, their eyes acknowledging the shared responsibility they carried. When the shift was completed, the guard who had spoken earlier stepped aside, but only for a moment. The officer in charge guided him to the president. The exchange was quiet and respectful. The president extended his hand and the guard accepted it briefly. The handshake was firm but gentle. "Thank you for explaining," the president said softly. There was no grand speech, no long ceremony, just a simple expression of understanding. "Thank you for listening." "Sir?" the guard replied with equal calm and sincerity. It was a moment where two very different responsibilities met with mutual respect. One held the weight of national leadership. The other held the weight of remembrance. Both understood now that honor takes many forms. The guard did not ask for recognition. The president did not insist on authority. Each simply acknowledged the value of the other. Visitors who witnessed the exchange would carry the memory with them. Not because of who was present, but because of what was shown. A reminder that respect can be spoken in quiet words. A reminder that understanding can be shared without force or argument. A reminder that duty, when chosen with love and purpose, can inspire others deeply. As the president's group prepared to leave, the guard returned to his place among the other soldiers. The ceremony continued, the steps continued, the story continued. The tomb remained protected, watched, and honored, just as it always had been. The sun across the white stone seemed warmer now, not harsh but comforting, like a gentle light meant to illuminate memory rather than erase it. The whispers among the visitors were filled with admiration, reflection, and peace. Many felt they had witnessed something they would think about for a very long time. Through calm words and steady steps, the meaning of duty had been shared, and it had been understood. The sun continued to shine gently over Arlington, and the day moved forward with a quiet grace. The visitors who had witnessed the exchange did not forget it easily. Some stayed longer than they originally planned, as if the ground itself invited them to reflect and breathe more slowly. The stillness of the place encouraged a kind of thoughtful silence that was rare in the world outside. The president and his group had stepped away from the tomb area, walking along a path that curved through the cemetery grounds. Trees offered soft shade and birds occasionally sang from high branches. The environment was peaceful yet filled with meaning. The president walked with a calm expression, not hurrying, simply taking in the space. The officer beside him shared gentle stories as they walked. He spoke about families who came each year to honor loved ones, about letters left at headstones, and about the quiet strength shown by people who remembered those who served. He shared how the cemetery was not only a place of sadness but also a place of deep love. Love for country, love for family, and love for sacrifice. It was a place where memories were honored with grace, where loss was met with dignity, and where silence itself spoke of gratitude. The president listened with genuine attention. He began to understand that the guard's words earlier had not simply been about rules. They had been about a promise. A promise to remember those who had given their lives without expecting anything in return. A promise to show that gratitude is not only spoken through speeches but through action, through presence, through respect. As they continued walking, they passed by rows of white headstones, each one similar in shape, yet each holding a different story. Some headstones were visited often, decorated with flowers or small flags. Others stood alone but not forgotten. The quiet beauty of the place touched every heart that walked among those stones. The president paused at one headstone that had a small drawing placed in front of it. It looked like a child had made it. The drawing showed a house, a smile, and a person wearing a uniform. The colors were bright, simple, full of love. The president looked at it for a long moment, understanding the meaning even without knowing the words behind it. Someone had missed someone very deeply. Someone had remembered with tenderness. Nearby, a mother sat with her hands resting gently on the grass near another headstone. Her expression was peaceful, though her eyes carried a quiet sadness. The president did not disturb her. He simply observed from a distance, respecting the privacy of her moment. There are some expressions of love that do not require conversation. They only require gentle space. As the group continued walking, one advisor spoke softly. "It is amazing how silence can say so much here." The president nodded. "Yes, it teaches without speaking." They eventually returned near the tomb area. The guard who had spoken earlier was now off duty, standing under a shaded area where guards rested between shifts. He was relaxed now, though his posture still held the natural discipline of someone who trained his body and mind with care. The president approached him quietly, without calling attention to himself. The guard stood respectfully, not in formal stance this time, but with a quiet readiness. "I wanted to say something more," the president said. The guard nodded gently, indicating he was listening. "When I first saw you standing there," the president continued, "I only noticed the difficulty. I saw a person in the heat standing without rest. I did not realize the depth of what you were doing. Today you helped me understand something important." The guard's expression softened, though it remained respectful. "It is my duty to protect the meaning of the tomb, sir," he replied. "Not just with steps, but with understanding." The president took a slow breath, thoughtful. "You did that. You helped me see the heart of it." There was a quiet pause, not uncomfortable, but full of respect. The president continued, "This place is not about power. It is not about who leads or who commands. It is about those who served without expecting anything. It is about gratitude." The guard nodded again. "Yes, sir. That is the spirit of the tomb. We carry it forward." The president then did something simple yet deeply meaningful. He placed his hand over his heart and bowed his head slightly. It was a gesture of respect, not from a position of authority, but from a place of sincere understanding. The guard responded with the same gesture. It was not for the cameras. It was not for an audience. It was a private exchange of shared respect. After a moment, the president said, "Thank you, not just for your duty, but for your reminder." The guard replied gently, "It is an honor to stand for those who cannot stand anymore." With that, the president stepped back, allowing the guard his space. The conversation had been simple yet full of meaning. No grand speeches were needed. The message had already been received with clarity. One of the visitors who had been standing nearby observed the interaction from a quiet distance. She smiled softly. The scene reminded her that sometimes the most powerful lessons come from calm voices, steady hearts, and simple truths. The president's group slowly prepared to leave the cemetery. Before departing, he turned back one last time to look at the tomb and the guard who had resumed walking his steps. The rhythm continued unchanged, steady, constant. 21 steps, pause, turn. 21 steps. It was like watching time honor memory. The president understood something now that he had not understood before. The guard's duty was not a performance. It was a commitment, a silent promise carried through discipline, love, and loyalty. As the president's vehicle pulled away, the visitors remained, still watching, still learning, still feeling. The guard continued his watch, the sound of his polished shoes tapping gently on the stone ground. The gentle echo traveled through the air like a soft reminder that memory does not fade when honor is present. A young visitor held his father's hand and whispered, "He is still walking." "Will he always keep walking?" His father smiled and nodded. "As long as this tomb stands, someone will walk for those who cannot." "It is a promise that does not end." The child looked at the guard with new admiration. He would remember this day. He would remember that honor lives in action, even when no applause is present. The wind moved slightly, carrying with it the quiet strength of the moment. The white stone of the tomb remained bright under the warm sky. The silence remained meaningful, full of stories that could not be spoken, but could always be honored. And so the tomb stayed guarded, the promise stayed unbroken, the respect stayed alive. The footsteps continued their rhythm, steady and sure for those who had given all, for those who had no names, but infinite remembrance. For the love of a nation that understands gratitude not through noise but through quiet devotion.